Hola, muy buenas tardes para todos. En este momento le estamos dando la bienvenida a cada uno de ustedes, pues por la oportunidad y el tiempo que han sacado para estar en este webinar, Productividad de los equipos de desarrollo de software, desafíos en postpandemia. En estos momentos, pues queremos darles la bienvenida, decirles que la maestría en ingeniería de software de la Universidad de los Andes, en alianza con Coursera, pues tiene previsto este espacio también. Y en estos momentos dejo a nuestra profesora Kelly Garcés, quien pues presentará a los ponentes en esta tarde y esperamos que todo lo que conversemos sea de mucho provecho para cada uno de ustedes y para esta profesión tan maravillosa.
Bueno, muy buenas tardes a todos. Voy a compartir mi pantalla. Entonces, a ver, espérense un momentito. Se bloqueó. Espérense que compartirla aquí. Bueno, listo. Entonces, em, como les decía, bienvenidos a este webinar. Queremos agradecerle a nuestros ponentes de hoy. Entonces, les queremos primero contar por qué estamos haciendo este webinar. Resulta que este año tuvimos una empresa que se acercó a nosotros y nos dijo, miren, desde que estamos en una modalidad de trabajo remoto, que esta era una empresa pues tradicional colombiana, ellos estaban antes de pandemia totalmente en una modalidad presencial, pero desde pandemia pues tuvieron progresivamente que migrarse a remoto y hoy en día la mayoría de sus contrataciones se hacen en modalidad remota. Entonces ellos nos dijeron, mire, tenemos muchas preguntas, queremos saber cómo cambió la productividad, queremos saber cómo se mide la productividad cuando hacemos trabajo remoto, cuáles son los factores que impactan la productividad, en qué tareas somos más o menos productivos. Por ejemplo, ellos nos decían, las actividades de diseño, de arquitectura y de diseño de software se han vuelto un reto para nosotros. Antes nosotros teníamos el tablero en la oficina y todos naturalmente en la discusión participábamos y ahora nos pasa en un ambiente virtual que es más difícil para nosotros hacer discusión, casi que son imposiciones de la arquitectura y hay muy poquitas personas que participan. Entonces, ¿en qué tareas somos más productivos y en qué tareas somos menos productivos o es más difícil y más retador hacer ingeniería de software? ¿Y cuáles son las prácticas para mejorar la productividad? Y podríamos agregar muchas más preguntas. Entonces, nosotros venimos con preguntas y venimos hoy a aprender de nuestros invitados y a construir cosas juntos. Entonces eso nos motivó a conformar este equipo investigador, que es un equipo interdisciplinario. Tenemos personas del departamento de psicología, tenemos a la profe Viviola que está aquí con nosotros, tenemos estudiantes de sistemas, está el profesor José Bocanegra y mi persona, ambos de la maestría en ingeniería de software. Y aquí queremos hacerle un llamado a ustedes. Si estas preguntas que yo introduje al principio también son unas preguntas para ustedes, estamos haciendo un llamado a acción para movernos como comunidad y para que podamos investigar y responder estas preguntas de forma colectiva, porque cada uno tiene sus opiniones y sus vivencias. Entonces, si ustedes están interesados en hacer parte de este equipo, por favor, escríbanos y así podremos trabajar juntos. Entonces la agenda que tenemos para hoy es esta de aquí. Primero tenemos una charla académica al cargo del profesor Marcos Kalinowski. Él es director del Laboratorio Exacta de la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Río de Janeiro. Tenemos una segunda charla, esta vez industrial, a cargo de colaboradores de Aranda Software, que es una empresa colombiana con la que tenemos unas fuertes relaciones. Y por último, tenemos una sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Entonces, vamos a dar paso a la agenda. La forma como vamos a manejar las preguntas y respuestas es, ustedes las pueden colocar, irlas colocando en nuestro chat. Las vamos a ir recogiendo, vamos a en función del tiempo final, abordar esas preguntas y pues las que queden pendientes, pues es la oportunidad para que sigamos las discusiones después. Entonces, vamos a dar paso a la agenda. Entonces, voy a presentar al profesor Marcos. El profesor Marcos es profesor de Ingeniería de Software del programa de posgrado del Departamento de Informática de la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Río. Su investigación se centra en la ingeniería de software empírica, los aspectos humanos, la ingeniería de requisitos, la calidad del software y la intersección entre ingeniería de software y ciencia de datos. Es uno de los fundadores y coordinadores de la iniciativa Exacta, que ofrece soluciones innovadoras a varios socios industriales. Es miembro de la Red Internacional de Investigación en Ingeniería de Software y ha participado activamente en colaboraciones de investigación internacionales antes de convertirse en profesor. Trabajó más de 10 años en la industria del software en diferentes roles. Su investigación se centra en las necesidades de la industria del software, ha recibido varios honores y premios internacionales y ha publicado en algunas de las principales revistas científicas y congresos en el área. Sirve en la comunidad como editor de la revista Software in Practice y es miembro del consejo editorial de la revista The Systems and Software y es parte de comité organizadores y del programa de varias conferencias internacionales, incluyendo ICSE 2026, que se celebrará en Río de Janeiro. Entonces, profesor Marcos, sin más preámbulos, por favor, podría iniciar. Voy a dejar de compartir pantalla.
Sí, muchas gracias por la invitación. Yo voy a hacer la presentación en inglés. No soy fluente en español, entonces, pero muchas gracias. So thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. Let me just quickly share the screen and put the in presentation mode here. Yes. You're now able to see the screen, right? Okay.
Yes.
So first of all, thank you very much for having me. I had the opportunity of being at your wonderful campus in Bogota in 2018 when the Ibero-American Software Engineering Conference happened there at your campus, and Kelly was one of the organizers of the conference. So it was a pleasure to be there with you, and I'm happy to be back interacting with you again on this very interesting talk. Especially, we also have experts from psychology, which is very interesting. It puts up a very interesting scenario for discussions because I might actually hand over some questions to Vivian, who's the expert. I saw that she has some initiatives on productivity and well-being related to health and other initiatives. So it's a pleasure to be with you. And I'll talk about the topic from a software engineer perspective. So I'm not an expert on psychology. So if I do something wrong here, please correct me in the sense of the human factors and psychology aspects. And I will focus from a software engineering side, some investigations that have been conducted related to how to improve productivity and how productivity is affected by different human aspects. And I'll try to bring something in this direction. So it's actually, this talk is interesting because it has some very subtle takeaways, but that can make a huge difference for companies with simple recommendations to be followed, but that can change actually productivity, and especially because it affects well-being of people that are working with the companies in remote settings, and well-being has a direct influence on productivity, as we will show later. So Kelly already introduced me, so I'll make this pretty quick. I work at the Departamento de Informática, the informatics department at PUC-Rio. There we have a lab called Exacta, which focuses on digital transformation and research related to software engineering, human-computer interaction, and data science. I'm also a senior advisor of the Brazilian National Software Quality Program called MPSPR. And I think Kelly already introduced me. Feel free, if anyone wants to connect with me over LinkedIn or exchange ideas afterwards, send me an email about the topic, or feel free to reach out. I always answer my emails. It might sometimes it takes a while, but I always answer my emails. So if you want to reach out through LinkedIn or Twitter, or now it's called X, right? Or email, feel free. And also the questions, you can make questions in Spanish. I'm just not comfortable in speaking Spanish, but I'm able to understand when you talk in Spanish. So feel free to make questions in Spanish, okay? This is the context where we're part of PUC-Rio, where there we have the Department of Informatics. PUC-Rio is, as well as Uniandes, we are among the best ranked universities in Latin America, according to the Times Higher Education. I know that you also are in this list. And especially recognized as a leading institution in industry integration. And The Department of Informatics, it was created in 1969, 67 actually, a long time ago. It was the first graduate program in computing in Brazil. And it has always been assessed with the highest quality score in the national assessments for research. And Exact is the lab that we founded there at the end of 2019, and which focused on software engineering, data science, human computer interaction. So I think you now have the overview of where I'm actually working. This is where I live in Rio de Janeiro. Some of you might know it already. If you don't know it yet and you have plans for visiting, it's always a pleasure to have students coming over and visiting here in Rio. One of my let's say my most bright students that I had recently was from Colombia. Actually, he came from Colombia. He did his master's with me, then he did his PhD with me. He's finalizing the PhD now at the 13th of December, and next year I'm also receiving one student, exchange student from Colombia. So if you have interest in visiting Rio and visiting Brazil, it's a nice setting that we have over here also. By coincidence, Rio is located in a very attractive city, so it's also a pleasant experience visiting here. Exacta Lab is, we created it in 2019. It's focused on digital transformation, and we have agile teams working there, mainly remotely. So remotely, some of them are working almost completely remotely, and some of them are working in hybrid, like that they meet once or twice a week to work together, and the other days they work remotely. But it all started in presence. So we had the whole migration when in March 2020 the pandemic came and we had to move to remote work. We experienced that. So we have this environment, as you can see in the pictures. These are pictures of the lab, and people were working there in person, in presence, always interacting face to face. And then suddenly the pandemic came in March 2020. They had to move remotely and to work from home, and we had to manage this. And we still have these teams, and now most of them are hybrid, remote or hybrid. So I can also talk a little bit about this experience in this context. Over the years, we have delivered several solutions. Exacta works a lot with Petrobras, which is the largest company in Brazil, and they are focused on oil and gas, and it's headquartered in Rio de Janeiro also. So we have lots of projects with them on artificial intelligence solutions for oil refineries, for oil exploration and other applications. And over the year, we registered some international patents in this sense of solutions, of software solutions created with and for Petrobras. Received also some awards for them from them for innovating their processes and tools. And this prize, we actually received this prize in 2022 and also in 2023, the Petrobras Inventor Award. And in 2022, it was for a very interesting solution because it was a solution, the solution here called Smart Tocha. It monitors the oil refineries, where the burning of the oil in the oil refineries, the image of the flames at the oil refineries, and takes actions to adjust the injection of vapor and other things to optimize the burning of the fuel. So this solution itself, it replaced, of course, a human being that had to watch the flame all day, and now it's automated and it helps a lot, and it's actually resulting in an energy savings of comparable to a city of 20,000 people constantly. For each refinery that uses this solution, they have energy savings equivalent to a city of 20,000 people, like constant energy savings equivalent to a small city of 20,000 people with a simple AI solution. So we have some interesting success cases, even though working remote, working hybridly, we kept things going, we kept delivering, and the teams are still working on R&D projects with Petrobras and other companies also. So this just wanted to bring in some essential aspects of agility, because this talk, it's focused on agile development and hybrid, in a hybrid context. So I brought just 2 or 3 slides. I have some backup slides if somebody asks about specifics for how do you estimate effort, or how do you so I have some backup slides that explain the whole methods and the most used methods like Scrum, SAFe, and all these. But I didn't want to go into details because I just want to explain the idea. The Agile Manifesto, it came up in 2001. And basically, it was a manifesto reinforcing the following values, right? Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And responding to change over following plan. And most of the Agile methods, they highly rely on human interaction. On collaboration, communication, and human interaction, which happens in a set of ceremonies like sprint planning, sprint reviews, sprint retrospective, daily meetings to assess what you did yesterday, what you're planning to do today, if you have any kind of blocking or it's actually focused on communication, collaboration, and these ceremonies that are conducted throughout the process. The Agile Manifesto also brought 12 principles, which you can see are highly aligned with this, focusing on customer satisfaction. Change is welcome. You should be able and embracing change so that you deliver solutions that get closer to the desired business outcome. Deliver frequently, working together with customers in a motivated team. Motivation, one of the human aspects that's very relevant in this context. Typically, it came up in an idea of being face-to-face, but now with the remote work structure, they have kind of support tools to support collaboration, communication remotely. We'll talk about this a little bit later. They focus on delivering working software, constant pace. This is also very important. People shouldn't be exposed to environment of stress or of being pushed too hard. So it should be a sustainable pace, a comfortable pace to produce, focusing on a good design, on good solutions with simplicity to deliver the business value to the customer, and always reflecting and adjusting the process. These were the principles that are actually contained in the different Agile methods that are available. The most used Agile methods, without any doubt, it's Scrum, especially if you have a single team, and if you have like scaled Agile or something, it's the SAFe framework for scaled Agile methods. So 20 years after the Agile Manifesto, an international group of researchers, including me, Professor Tayana Conte, and Professor Rafael Prikladnicki from Brazil, and many other researchers from different countries, we reinvestigated the status quo regarding agility and what it actually means being agile in 2021. So this paper was actually published in 2022 in the Transactions on Software Engineering. And basically, we observed that while most of the companies are operating using Agile methods, after some time they start mutating their practices into hybrid practice. What's hybrid? Hybrid in the sense of using an Agile method, but with some practices that could be related more to plan-driven development. So it's not they do not follow the Agile Manifesto like blindly in every sense, but they adapt to some sense. And bring in some elements to get more control over estimates and other aspects that have been reported. And nevertheless, there's an increasing trend towards agility. Most of the companies mostly operate on Agile methods. Like nowadays, agility is widespread. So it's not an issue of even the investigation, Agile or plan-driven. In some cases, they don't even make that much sense anymore because like 95% of people are using Agile. So you're comparing a minority of companies that have a very specific applications that demand plan-driven solutions sometimes. So, but mostly software is being developed in agile ways with some hybrid practices, but and the degree of agility is increasing in the way how the disciplines are being performed, which means it's getting more and more aligned to those values of agility and the principles of agility over time. This is the main findings I wanted to highlight here about agility, but basically those values and principles, they still hold. That's fine. They are still the basis for defining what's agility. And but what we see is that there are some practices that that result in achieving the kind of results that are expected from an agile company, like embracing change and delivering frequently, like you have continuous integration practices. For embracing change, you have backlog management and other practices that are typically recognized as being part of agile, and they are the ones that define agility. Similarly to that, there was actually a book also that came out during the pandemic, which puts this emphasis on the practices. It's called Modern Software Engineering by Ivar Jacobson. I have it up there. It's and the subtitle of this Modern Software Engineering book is "Free the Practices from the Method Prison." Like, let's focus on the practices, on how we do things, and not on following practice A, method A or method B. But let's focus on the practices that work for the human beings that are actually working on developing software in the organization. So, in innovation context, I just want to introduce the process that we use at Exacta, because some examples I will also, for questions later, I will refer to our case, and then as we are working mainly in innovation context and research and development projects from the oil and gas sector, the energy sector, and other also governmental sectors here that we are supporting with R&D projects. So therefore, I will introduce you this process. We call it Lean R&D, Lean Research and Development. It also has the basics of agility, like even some principles that some of you might know, like fail fast principle, that you have checkpoints in which you could suspend the project at any point in time to explore different ideas, so that you don't waste your effort working on something that will not deliver the outcome that's expected. So in this case, what's different here is that in innovation projects, we typically we try to identify, to elicit business hypotheses. What kind of benefit do we want to bring to the business? And therefrom, we develop a minimal viable product, an MVP, which we can use to test if this product will deliver that kind of result. So it's an agile approach, an experimentation-based agile approach, in which the development itself basically follows Scrum with sprint planning, sprint reviews, agile development, the basic agile development. But we have to some phases in advance because of the uncertain nature of research projects, right? You have to do some more technical feasibility studies to see if you could actually reach some kind of result there. It's not the conventional software systems that we are building. We're typically exploring business hypotheses, ideas with innovative solutions. We have to investigate if it would actually work, or if we should address a different idea. So if anyone has interest, this method, it's published here in 2020. We published it. We established it when we started the Exacta initiative, and from there to now, it's more or less the same and a stable version that we use of this. Whenever we start innovation projects, we typically take this framework and plan according to this roadmap of activities to be conducted. So let me get 3 years back to the pandemic, just because the pandemic is how, I wouldn't say that it is how it all began, because there were, of course, there were people working remotely before the pandemic, right? It's well known that we had geographically distributed companies before. We had even conferences on global software engineering and other exploring this distribution aspect. But unquestionably, the pandemic changed the overall scenario, right? So it was a forced change, but it changed what happened. And during this advent of the pandemic in the beginning of 2020, we as soon as we had the configuration of the pandemic and companies started working from home, we set up a survey to investigate the impacts of this abrupt change from working from home. And there we conducted a huge survey, which was led by Paul Ralph and Sebastian Baltes. Again, I was responsible for translating it to Portuguese, redistributing the survey in Brazil, and also helping with the analysis procedure for the Brazilian data. But basically, the survey was led by Paul Ralph and Sebastian Baltes. It was run in 12 different languages, one of them Portuguese, which was my contribution to this part. And it got responses from 53 countries, 53 different countries. 2,225 developers answered this survey. And we had to be fast because the phenomena that we wanted to investigate was migrating from in-presence work to home, and forcibly, like because of the pandemic. So people were not prepared to do that. We did data collection very, very fast. Like we did it in 3 weeks, which was extremely fast for this amount of data that we collected, from March 27 to April 14. And if you remember the pandemic, it was typically in March where everything was suspended, say, okay, you're not allowed to go to the office anymore. Here in Brazil, it was at the 16th of March when they closed our university here, said, okay, you're not coming back on Monday because nobody is coming in. This was at the 16th of March. So we ran it right after the beginning of the pandemic to collect this data of this abrupt change. And the interesting thing of this is, so basically this is the context and method. I don't want to emphasize the method. I want to focus more on the results of what we found. If anyone is interested on the method or details, there's a paper published in the Empirical Software Engineering Journal, which reports the pandemic programming, this abrupt switch from home working after the pandemic. And actually little was known about working from home during a major crisis also, because people were also with fear of the pandemic. There were many other factors involved. And so we designed the questionnaire to explore this, and we analyzed the data using different statistical methods, including structural equation modeling, like multifactorial analysis on a theoretical model, which I'm going to show you now. So this is the outcomes. If we look at this, we can see the theoretical constructs that we assessed. We looked at fear of the pandemic. We looked at disaster preparedness. We looked at home office ergonomics, well-being, and productivity. Those were 5 constructs that were part of our survey. For each of these constructs, we tried as good as possible within the possibilities to identify validated scales. For instance, for well-being, we use the scale of the World Health Organization. For productivity, also, we use the HPQ scale, which is also for more generic productivity-related questionnaire. I'll talk about more specific things that we came up after this, actually, that the community came up after this in a while. So disaster preparedness, home office ergonomics, all the argumentation of how we instrumented each of these constructs into the survey is discussed as part of the paper. But what we found that fear, of course, influences well-being negatively. Disaster preparedness, if you're not prepared for disaster, actually, if you're prepared for disaster, you will have less fear. You will be more prepared for the situation to handle it. And these data were actually statistically confirmed. And especially, there's a very strong correlation that we observed between well-being, the scale of well-being, and the scale for productivity. So if you're investing in the well-being of your developers, it was perceived productivity that we measured, but still they were comparing themselves against themselves in different times, in different periods of time. And we can see this link here is very important, which is probably something that Viviola also has observed, which she will talk about this from a psychological point of view, that well-being typically affects the productivity of people if they're not feeling well, if they don't have a safe environment, or if they're having mental health issues or health issues in general, or if they're not motivated enough. All these things will impact their well-being. And if they're not feeling well, typically the productivity goes down. So also, there's an influence of home office ergonomics was particularly relevant in this context, because as they just moved home and forcedly, people didn't have a home office structure. They didn't have like developers at the office. They had 2 monitors. They had like everything set up, a comfortable ergonomic chair, a keyboard, whatever they need. And then they start working from home. They put their laptops on sit on the couch with their laptops and then start like programming, and then with their child running around, and so the environment was actually not even from this ergonomic perspective, but also from even other things like the interruptions that you face during the environment and other aspects. Here we looked into the ergonomics, but there are many other aspects that actually also could influence productivity. So it was a simplified model, this theoretical model here, for which we found these relations. So our outcomes here was basically recommendations for the companies so that they should invest in support home office ergonomics of the employees during the home office work or something, especially forced home office work. Here in Brazil, we had some companies like delivering chairs for their co-workers for working from home, and investing in other kinds of initiatives for well-being. So this was basically the recommendations that we came out of this survey. We confirmed some of these relations statistically, and we provided some recommendations that we believed could potentially help. Like as I said, we are not experts in psychology, but things that we believed could help for in general to promote well-being of people. So the effects that we observed, the pandemic had a negative effect on well-being and productivity, but it was the pandemic also. It was the first weeks of the pandemic. So afterwards, things will change. I'll show you in a while that things changed. Productivity and well-being are closely related. This is very important for this finding itself. It's very important. Despite soft engineering being investigated since 1965, when the term was coined, there are not many studies relating actually psychometrics like real psychological constructs to soft engineering aspects. Like so it's one of a few studies that does this in this sense in our field. So there's a lot. This is a huge opportunity for people also to connect with people from psychology. Here at our university, also have a partnership with one of the professors from the psychology department, Jean Carlos Natividade. He works on personality and other aspects, and supported me also in some endeavors, because at some point we reach a point where we are not the experts anymore. We need to reach out to someone who really understands psychology, psychometrics, and all these things. Although there is a close relation between empirical soft engineering and the psychometric study, because they study similar things, like the empirical methods and how to assess and all, but we don't have the background to assess the psychometric instruments. So we have to actually at least to identify which are the valid scales, the good ones to use, how to interpret them, how to interpret the different norms for these scales. And so all these details, a psychologist can surely help to do this better. We also observed some details. These were valid for the pandemic, but they are not the focus of this talk, right? Like women and parents and people with disabilities can be disproportionately affected, because all of a sudden they had to be there schooling their kids and working at the same time, for instance. So this kind of things, they have effects, of course, on the outcome. So now let's talk a bit about working from home. So during the pandemic, everyone had to work from home, like mostly. In software engineers, mostly they had to work from home. I think almost everywhere in the world. In Brazil, companies closed, and now you have to do your work remotely. And there are also some papers on this in our software engineering field, especially some investigations led by Daya Smith from the Blackidge Institute of Technology. She has been investigating working from home. And if you look at the titles of these papers, they give a huge hint into what's happening. From forced working from home to voluntary working from anywhere, two revolutions in telework. You read the title, it's kind of you already see what happened, right? Because it was forced working from home, and all of a sudden people started liking working from home, and now it's difficult to get them back. Like if a company says, "Oh, we are going back 100% in presence," people typically complain, "Oh, but I would like to have some flexibility. Why not? And why do I have to go there if I can do my work from home?" So, and especially if I can work from anywhere. So you started having people traveling around the world and doing remote work, and still working for their companies and enjoying it, like living in different places. And these papers reflect this. And the second one also, working from home is here to stay, in which they are organized. They analyze how software organizations started to organize themselves, mainly in hybrid forms, sometimes asking like for 2 days in presence a week or something, so that they could have benefits from both aspects, from the remote side and also from the in-presence part, which is many companies here in Brazil went in this direction. Even Petrobras, 60,000 employees. Petrobras is the largest company in Brazil. They typically have two days a week for most of the employees. I'm not sure if it's completely like strict, but most of the employees that collaborate with us or with whom we have close connection, they work 2 times a week, at least 2 times a week in the office, and they have flexibility for the remaining days of the week. So there's many companies started to have policies for having hybrid work, so that they could keep the benefits of working from home, but also try to because at some point working from home started having trouble also when you started onboarding new people that were not aligned to the company's culture, that did not know the other co-workers, and then it's difficult to do the onboarding. And so there are lots of challenges. At the beginning, at some point, it started to work, but then people start changing companies and everything, and then you face different difficulties again. So it was a very interesting moment, and these papers, they are very good to read them through to understand these moments. Basically, I just took some highlights here to working from home has become common in software companies since the pandemic, and it can have positive and negative impacts on productivity. I'll take a deeper look into this in a couple of minutes. So what I'm saying, it depends heavily on how you structure your processes, how you structure the work, how you structure in particular the communication and collaboration practices, how they are structured. It has a huge impact if you actually could have a positive impact on productivity or negative one if you're not sufficiently prepared to keep the communication and collaboration like functioning smoothly at the company, even though people are working remote. And there are lots of hints which I will provide here. Most of them are taken out of this first paper here. Yes, the second one talks more about the policies that companies are using. This first one is the one that I used as a basis for some advice that I'm going to provide you in a couple of minutes. So the third point is most employees are willing to continue working from home at least part-time. This was also observed that the employees started to like working from home. And sometimes they started, even there are some reports in these papers that they started requiring it. They start, okay, if you don't allow me to some flexibility or to work from home, sometimes I'm going to switch company. So there are some examples like these. And also what increased a lot is international jobs, like people from South America working to companies in the US, in Europe, or just an example, but also anywhere in the world, it started to happen. So companies are now in a situation in which the employees, if they don't provide some kind of flexibility, the employees might switch to different companies which allow this kind of flexibility and which might be located even at the other side of the world. Okay, so we face the same. As I said, it happened everywhere. In Exacta, we had in presence until March 2020, remote until March 2022, and since then we have hybrid. Basically, in March 2022, people started coming back. This was an in presence, a lean inception meeting. I think product backlog building dynamics, which software engineers typically do in innovation projects when they start building a backlog. So there was a discussion here with, I think there was some people from Petrobras together with people from our team here discussing a backlog refinement. And here it's a meeting actually, this was a screenshot of a meeting of one of the teams in which we did a short celebration meeting of one of the outcomes, but they were working remote all the time. So we started working remote and using, as you all typically experienced, using Zoom, Teams, because Petrobras uses Teams, and at PUC we also use Zoom as I see, and but Petrobras uses Teams. So we started using the tools to collaborate and to integrate also with others, and started working remotely as everyone else. So we experienced this. We had projects going on in presence, and then we had projects going on completely remotely, and now we're doing them hybridly because people also like to come here at least once to the university campus and to exchange ideas and to have lunch together. And I think it's beneficial for them that they meet at least once a week. So most of the teams they have one or two encounters per week. Many of them have one, but it's at least something to create the team spirit, to have them. I think it's important for them also, even for their well-being, so that they get together for lunch and for other things. Once a month, we have a happy hour in which we also do it in presence, and even people who work remotely, they go to the happy hour so that they can meet there. And it's good to create this motivation, the team spirit. And so we have this new reality. This is what I want. This, in summary, we had the pandemic. We investigated some of the consequences. Then things started to change. But nowadays, the companies are operating hybridly and mainly based on agile methods. So this is if you take the first survey I talked about agility, it was most of the companies are towards agility, and most of them are also working hybridly. We have other studies showing this. So this is a scenario. It's not an exceptional scenario that you're investigating like 5% of the companies, but you're investigating the majority of the companies in the world with this configuration. If you look at hybrid, mainly agile companies, they are probably the highest representation within software development companies. So they are the typical scenario. That's what I want to say. So let's take a look at productivity and human aspects. And first, I want to talk a little bit about productivity, about what some books say about productivity very, very quickly. This book, I like it a lot. It's a set of chapters focused explicitly on productivity in software engineering. Each chapter has some key ideas at the end of the chapter. So I took some of these key ideas, just some of them, and put them in here. There are many others. If I had all the key ideas of all the chapters, I think the book, I have it here because I was just taking the key ideas out of it, like yesterday or so. So it has lots of chapters and key ideas. It would be a huge list, right? The book has 25 chapters on productivity. So and each chapter is like written by a set of authors, and then it has some reflections and key ideas on productivity at the end. It's a nice reflection on productivity. Things that people say, low-end productivity can be really low. This is one of the things, like you might have people that are producing and delivering, delivering value to the customer like 10 or 20 times more than others. The low end of productivity in software engineering is very low. And why I'm saying this, it's not that you should punish these people, identify and punish, but you should try to support them. You should try to identify whoever is having difficulties in producing, trying to understand why he's having these difficulties, trying to support him. If he has technical difficulties, deliver training. If he's facing some kind of psychological problems, provide some kind of psychological support. If he's blocked by the imposter phenomenon or something, he might need some kind of support, and try to address this. As a healthy organization, you should try to look for your employees, and it happens to some of them that there will be many of them actually very close to the low end of productivity, which is very low. And then when we talk very low in software engineering, it's not like doing half the work, it's doing 1/10 of the work. It's like there are people that will be doing 10 times more than others in the company, and you should look at those carefully to try to see how can you help them, how can you motivate them, and so that they also get productivity. Quality, of course, matters too. This is an advice here to assign critical tasks to the best engineers. The best engineers, it's a tough term to identify the best engineers, especially if you shouldn't name someone as the best engineer. You should do this but they have some experiences reported there that say the critical task, you should assign them to someone you really trust for doing this, like the guy who delivers things without bugs, and you know it, and you. So there is a huge difference between the two ends of productivity in software development, and this should be considered. But it should be considered taking a human perspective on what's happening at both ends. Okay. Do the best to not, this is also, it's written there as a key takeaway, do the best to not have very weak engineers on your team at all. It's written exactly like this, but I would say do the best to support those that are not producing as well as the others, so that they can also do it, so that they teach them, incentivate them, provide them with motivation, with confidence, and with the technical skills, so that they can also do it, and make them grow in their careers. So this is the approach that I would take towards this bullet item. I understand that people that are producing less might, of course, be a problem for the team, but it's a problem that you should work on it, because it's a human being that's there. It's software is not manufactured; it's being developed by human beings. So we have to be careful when we handle this. There is no single productivity metrics. I'm going to talk about this also. And science says that the industry should strive for happy developers. And there's a very interesting paper on this. I brought it in here. The idea is not to read all the consequences of being happy or unhappy, but it used a scale for measuring happiness and everything. I don't remember the exact scale because I'm not an expert on psychometric instruments in general. Basically what they found is that happiness of the developers can have positive or negative consequences. If you're unhappy, you have several negative consequences on the project. And if you're happy, it has several positive consequences. They mapped lots of consequences of unhappiness, of happiness. They also compared like benchmarking against other populations. And they figured out that actually software engineers are slightly happier than some other professionals, slightly happier. But still, the improvements could be, of course, done. And there are huge differences in the software engineers that feel happy and unhappy. The consequences are severe. Like so, even though the population of software engineers is slightly happier than some other professionals, which could be due to several reasons, but the ones that are unhappy, they have severe consequences. So it's something very important to address the happiness of the software developers. So here we're looking exactly at this is strongly related. So I was really happy when I was joined the meeting, was introduced that Viviola is here, a professor from psychology, because to see how important these things are for us, right? So this paper was the best paper of the year of 2018 at the Journal of Systems and Software, which is one of the main journals, scientific journals in our area. Then there's the space of developer productivity. This is very interesting. It's also written by Nicole Forsgren, Margaret and Story, Tom Zimmerman. Many people have focused on productivity. Tom Zimmerman is also one of the editors of the book that I just mentioned, and he's very active at Microsoft. Peggy, Margaret and Story also is very active on this, on defining productivity since earlier years. And they came up in 2021. Sorry, I didn't put the year in here, but I think it was 2021, but this was by accident. I forgot the year in the citation. So it was 2021. They came up with the space developer productivity framework. And this is an acronym. And these are 5 things that should be measured for productivity, that should be considered for productivity. And there you see, it's not just throughput. It's not just delivering code or doing commits on a Git repository, like measuring people like robots, but you're actually measuring other aspects of productivity here. And then let me try to speed up a little bit. You're measuring, I will not go into the details of each construct, but just the name of the construct already provides an idea. So it talks about the importance of measuring satisfaction and well-being, measuring the performance as typically measured, like throughput, what are you delivering to the customers, value delivered, and things like these. Activities like the number of commits, number of lines. But you should be careful with these kind of measures, because to avoid treating humans like robots, like the Industrial Revolution kind of stuff that you have the modern times, like movie by Charles Chaplin, you might know this one. So we should avoid measuring people in these ways, right? And communication collaboration, which is maybe the most important aspect for us in the hybrid setting, in the distributed setting. All of these dimensions, of course, important. Efficiency and flow, like developing software requires concentration. And to get into a state of concentration, you need to take some time to understand what does this class I'm developing actually do? What is it for? With which other classes or objects does it collaborate? And how does it do that? It takes some time until you get into this and do the coding. And then at some point you face an interruption. Somebody knocks at your door or knocks at your or asks you something. A coworker sits beside you, and then you get distracted, and you have to take all this time again to do this immersion into the problem. And the efficiency flow is this capacity of working without internal or external interruptions, focused on the problem. So these are the space framework constructs. And there are also some hints on how to measure these 5 constructs. So and they emphasize that to measure some of them carefully, like the ones to be measured careful, lines of code, very careful with measuring lines of code for individual developers, measuring story points for teams, also careful with these things that try to measure productivity too objectively. You sometimes have to be careful with them because they might be leading to other interpretations. And so at least there's an awareness on this. Of course, we have to somehow understand who's not delivering, who's not, so that we can try to help these people. That's the perspective, okay? So, and very interestingly, this is another human aspect that's very, very interesting, into which researchers have recently taken a look. It's on the imposter phenomenon. And recently a group of researchers made an investigation on the imposter phenomenon, and basically to understand it, if it happens for software engineers, for people that are involved in software engineering, right? And what they figured out, there was some studies showing that it happens in students, and then they took it to the professional level, and they figured out that it happens with a huge proportion of developers, like 52%, of course, with some confidence interval to the left or to the right, but on average, a proportion of 52% of the developers face severe, frequent or intense imposter phenomenon symptoms. And for women, it's even worse. For women, it was statistically significant, this difference between women and men, that women are more strongly affected within the IT sector, within the STEM sector, by the imposter phenomenon. They are more heavily affected by it. Maybe because there could be many reasons, right? But maybe because they are typically in computer science, they're typically a minority, and also in the companies with software developers and things. And then they sometimes they don't feel comfortable in expressing something because about which they are not completely sure, right? So and then this is kind of the things. The imposter phenomenon is when you believe that you're not able to do things, even those things that you're actually able to do, because you feel like an imposter. You think that others are doing better than you, that you shouldn't be at the place where you actually are. You shouldn't be. You are there just by luck or by coincidence, but you're not actually. You do not deserve the things that you achieve, right? And you feel like a fraud all the time. This is the manifestation of this phenomenon. And it happens more in women, which is something we should take care of. Maybe because of the environment also, as I said, if you're a minority group within a context, and sometimes even cultural aspects could affect this, but it's a huge problem, especially because the same study also found that people who suffer from IP, they perceive themselves as less productive in all 5 space dimensions. They have negative influences on all of these 5. If you have IP, you will have negative influences on your well-being, on your performance, activity, communication, collaboration, efficiency, and flow, if you're working in software and you're facing IP. So this is a very important thing to also consider. 50%, let's round it up, 50% of all developers face IP. So 50% of our developers are being negatively affected, the productivity of them. So we should, how important it is to get closer to psychology-related research and assistance to those companies from a human resources perspective on how to assist employees. And how to, it's very, very important in this sense. So let me wrap up. This is I think I might need 3 more minutes to wrap it up, but these are some recommendations. And here, I took some recommendations for each of them. Some of them I took from Daya's paper on the working from home aspects. And for satisfaction and well-being, she lists the key findings for each of these. She didn't look into performance and activity because she didn't measure them directly. She approached them based on survey instruments, and she didn't measure these things. So she focused on satisfaction and well-being and some other space constructs, but organized by the space constructs. And there she listed key findings and the adjustments for working from home and working from anywhere. This access anywhere, okay? From working from wherever you want to work. So regarding the ergonomics, the adjustment is companies should reimburse home office equipment, some basic advice, right? That the findings like poor workplaces have an impact. And also the daily hours and things of your routines. like for instance, introducing a hard stop, like a forced hard stop. You should get away from your computer for at least 1 hour, have lunch and distract yourself a bit, and then you get back. These kind of things, so that people don't get like overstressed on their work and do not stop for it, because they're not interacting with other people who say, let's take a break, let's drink a coffee, let's go out for lunch. It is not happening. So there are some cautions here regarding this. Physical activities. There are some advices on how you can, small practices that you can, that should have a positive influence based on. There were also company co-authors and work closely done with companies. This is a very interesting work and suggestions that she provides here. For performance and activity, as I said, she didn't measure them directly, but they are highly dependent on communication, collaboration practices, because to deliver, you need to collaborate, you need to communicate, you need to have people engaged, motivated, interacting, also to do stuff. So and regarding communication and collaboration, there is lots of advice again. So for communication and collaboration, some very interesting advice aspects that she brings out here. For instance, schedule regular virtual events for people to socialize, team cohesion, like try to organize regular virtual working sessions for the team. You have these approaches like pair and mob programming. Mob programming is people programming together to share experiences, and so try to promote this kind of interaction in the team. Also have an environment where you can have drop-in video rooms. Like, okay, I have a question. Let's get into the video room and chat over there. Okay, so you can easily. So having a nice instant messaging support system like Slack or Discord or something organized, where you can have a video drop-in room, a lounge or something, and organized channels per project to communicate. These things help, and there's lots of advice regarding these suggestions here. Sorry, this one I forgot to change the title. It's efficiency and flow, so that's my fault here. So for efficiency and flow, also organize extended pairing sessions to ensure discipline and to train people also on how to work, how to cope with the way how the organization typically works and does things. And there are some interesting suggestions, like start meetings with a short break, prepare an agenda and input material for discussion, so that people can actually focus during the meetings, and introduce a meeting-free day once a week. This is very interesting because people started to complain after the pandemic, working from home, lots of interruption all the time. So what did they start to request? I want one day without meetings so I can actually do my work, because otherwise, since now I'm not there, so that people can quickly exchange information, everybody's scheduling meetings all the time. And I have now a week. If I access the calendar, I have like 25 meetings scheduled in my week, and I have a couple of hours left for doing the remaining work. And so this day once a week free, so that you can actually work on your backlog on things that you have to actually do, is very interesting. So wrapping it all up, science says that industry should strive for happy developers. This is very important. And I also said that the imposter phenomenon has high prevalence in software engineers, right? So the key takeaway here would be that organizations should consider human aspects and agile collaboration communication practice, such as the advices by Daya's paper and by these other investigations on how to promote well-being, also from this other paper on imposter phenomenon and other general papers that investigate the happiness, unhappiness in software engineers, that these aspects are very important to consider, right? And they should provide employees with psychological safety, because this can reduce the manifestation of the imposter phenomenon if you provide them with some safety to feel free to communicate, to collaborate, because they will not be judged, they will not be and this kind of thing. And to foster team cohesion, making the best out of their well-being and productivity. If you want to boost productivity, you have to take care about your employees. You have to take care about the well-being of your employees. These are the last two slides here to wrap up. Just I'm sorry, I think I took a couple of minutes more than expected here, but this kind of it's a very interesting topic. So I kind of sometimes when I start talking about it, it's difficult to limit the time because I want to keep talking about it for hours. So I would do it happily, but so invest your best efforts in making developers feel happy and motivated also. Assess and support developers' satisfaction and emotional well-being to the best of your possibilities. Ideally with the support from people who know how to assess satisfaction, emotional well-being, and other aspects like people from psychology, for instance. And it will help their productivity, right? It will help because not only to assess, but to support and to assist in this sense. Do not pressure employees to be productive. This will make things worse. If you take the less productive person and you start like pressuring over her, it will be worse. And recognize the achievements, ideally as team achievements. Try to create this team spirit within the agility has this team spirit that they are working together. As soon as you finish a task, one of the practices that are done in some companies is that once a task is finished, the person removes the name because it was a task finished by the team. And then he looks, what else does the team have to do? I'll take the next one to help the team. So the outcome is a team outcome. And try to understand, like to qualitatively and individually understand why someone is not productive, but to understand, not to expose them. You try to understand the individual reasons why someone could not be productive. Is it a need for training? Is it some other kind of support that the person is needing? So you have to understand this. There are different reasons for people and different kinds of support. People are complex, right? We're not easy to understand and to. So to the best of your possibilities, considering the imposter phenomenon prevalence in our field and the consequences of this prevalence, promote confidence within your possibilities, like deliver trust in people, like tell them that they're able to do their job, that you believe in them, and like try to make them feel confident about their capacities and their skills of doing stuff, and provide an environment for psychological safety. If they don't understand something, they can feel free and safe to say, oh, I have some difficulties here, I didn't understand this or that, so they didn't have to hide their difficulties. And review your agile practices, focusing on effective communication and collaboration. This is especially focused on hybrid settings, because this is the part when you all start working from different places, communication might have a drawback there, and collaboration, and so you should focus on this. Take a look at these papers that I brought here from Daya. They're very interesting. She has been focusing on this as one of the main topics of her research, with some interesting outcomes. Ask employees what they need, try to understand them, get close to them. Like if you have a human resources management, some kind of this, make a one-to-one approach, try to understand people and help them to improve the ergonomics of their workspace. If you're working from home, or even if it's at the office, they should have a nice setting, a good setting. So thank you very much for having me. This was what I wanted to talk. There's a lot of, as you can see, the influence of human factors on productivities, it's huge. So that it's a really interesting topic, because typically when people talk about productivity with organizations, they say, oh, we should use this kind of method to estimate story points, or we should do this, and there's so much more behind it. Like if you have to look at the people, if you want to win at the other side with the throughput and productivity, you have to take care of your team, because software is being developed by human beings. So thank you very much for having me, and it was a pleasure. I'm of course here. Sorry for taking a couple of minutes more, and thank you very much. So I'm not sure the next steps. I think Kelly can explain.
Profesor Marcos, muchas gracias por su presentación, muy amable. Ahora continuamos con la charla académica. Perdón, luego de la charla académica vamos a dar paso a la charla industrial. Es el turno entonces para Alejandro Cañón. Alejandro es gerente de productos de Aranda Software, es también experto en tecnologías de la información y cuenta con alrededor de 15 años de experiencia internacional. Él tiene un amplio conocimiento en disciplinas como la gestión de servicios TI, la gestión de seguridad de la información y la gestión de activos. Alejandro, muchas gracias por su compañía.
No, gracias a ti, José, al Departamento de Ingeniería de Sistemas y Computación de la UniAndes y, por supuesto, a los asistentes a la charla del día de hoy. Permítanme, por favor, compartir la pantalla para que podamos comenzar. Si me dan un segundo. Creería que ya la pueden ver. ¿Me confirman, por favor? Creería que sí. Bien.
Sí, señor.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Lo que les queremos contar hoy es nuestra experiencia, tomarla como una experiencia que es representativa de una empresa en particular dentro de cierto rubro, no es representativa de la industria del desarrollo de software, sino que es un punto dentro de lo que nos comentaba Marcos anteriormente, de una recopilación de diferentes experiencias que uno tiene que saber sopesar para luego tener estadísticas y datos más agregados. ¿Bien? Permítanos antes contarles un poquito más de nosotros. Nosotros somos una software factory, ¿ok? Que si bien está basada en Colombia, principalmente en Bogotá, nosotros nos dedicamos a construir software estándar para empresas, B2B. ¿Bien? Siempre invito, y cuando cuento esto primero, siempre invito a hacer el paralelo porque no necesariamente los hallazgos, ¿bien? Son extrapolables y comparables cuando las empresas de software hacen programas estándar o soluciones estándar versus cuando las fábricas de software hacen soluciones a la medida, hacen proyectos de desarrollo a la medida. Es importante hacer ese tipo de distinción y pues nosotros lo que venimos a contar desde el punto de vista de organizaciones que hacemos software para empresas. 22 años ya en el mercado. Nuestras soluciones se ofrecen a través de socios de negocio, a través de partners, es decir, nuestro foco como Software Factory es crear las soluciones que deleiten y que encanten de la mejor manera posible a nuestros clientes, pero la comercialización, el delivery y la postventa lo hacen terceros. Bien, nosotros a día de hoy somos alrededor de 170 personas en 11 países de Latinoamérica. El headcount principalmente está en Colombia, en Bogotá, pero de esos la mitad son desarrolladores. Cuando digo desarrolladores, principalmente es front, back, pero también está QA, hay otras disciplinas que les voy a contar a continuación. Eso a nivel de contexto. ¿Qué hacemos nosotros como compañía? Nosotros, como les contaba, hacemos soluciones B2B para empresas que se enfocan en dos grandes conceptos y necesidades que son comunes para las organizaciones. Lo que está a la izquierda, que llamamos soluciones de Service Management, básicamente son soluciones de automatización de procesos. ¿Bien? Es decir, llevar a las empresas de procesos que son gestionados de manera manual o donde usamos soluciones, entiéndase el Excel o el correo, etcétera, que dificultan mucho la trazabilidad, el seguimiento y el tracking para la toma de decisiones, a pasar a soluciones donde los procesos siguen un enfoque mucho más estructurado, ordenado y predecible. Y las soluciones de la derecha, llamadas de Unified Management, son soluciones que a diferencia de las anteriores, que sirven para cualquier tipo de industria, ¿bien? Las de Unified Management son más específicas para las áreas de tecnología de las organizaciones, ¿bien? No es lo mismo, y con esto quiero hacer el paralelo de comparación, una empresa que tiene un parque tecnológico de 50, 100, 200 equipos, entre equipos PC, celulares, etcétera, a cuando una organización tiene un parque tecnológico de 1000, 2000, 5000, ya sea arriba equipamientos. Entonces, Unified Management busca ahí ayudar a automatizar ese control y esa gestión. En negrita ven los acrónimos de las diferentes soluciones y esto es importante tenerlo presente porque nuestros equipos de desarrollo están organizados por producto, por solución. ¿Ven? Y eso es muy importante tenerlo presente. Por supuesto, esto es nuestra dinámica, por supuesto que puede ser diferente de organización a organización. A medida de que los productos son más rentables o generan mayor éxito en los mercados a los que apuntamos, pues por supuesto los equipos de desarrollo van a ser mucho más grandes. A día de hoy SMS y ADM, cada una de estas líneas de negocio de Service Management y Unified Management, pues son los que tienen headcounts mayores de desarrollo. También porque son productos que en su ciclo de vida ya están en una etapa entre que están no solo creciendo, sino alcanzando ya una meseta de madurez. ¿Sí? Nosotros hasta 2020 estábamos en la transición y ya estábamos pasándonos de un enfoque netamente cascada a una metodología de gestión mucho más ágil, mucho más iterativa. ¿Bien? Teniendo presente que en 2020, hasta 2020, hasta la pandemia, pues nosotros veníamos trabajando 100% presencial en las oficinas principales en Bogotá, pero también tenemos algunos pequeños equipos o células que están distribuidas en ciudades como Popayán, por ejemplo, en el eje cafetero tenemos algunas células muy específicas. ¿Bien? Entonces, llamemos que teníamos un gran equipo basado en oficina, basado en Bogotá y algunos repartidos en algunas ciudades. Bien, ese ejercicio para nosotros, bien, significó antes de la pandemia, eso es súper importante, es ir navegando por el cambio de una metodología de cascada al cambio de una metodología ágil. Pero ojo, ágil e iterativo es irrestricto o es indiferente de si yo estoy físicamente ubicado en una oficina o si estoy en mi casa o si estoy en cowork. O sea, a día de hoy, o digamos hasta esa fecha, no le tomábamos el peso, entre comillas, al concepto de teletrabajo. O sea, las personas que tenemos en el eje cafetero o en Popayán, por decirlo de alguna manera, pues igual todos los días iban y se reunían y trabajaban. Llegando la pandemia, bien, es ahí donde efectivamente, y creo que acá es un lugar común, bien, pues toda la empresa tuvo que moverse a remoto y eso pasó en todos lados, bien. El tema es que si uno empieza a mirar lo que ocurrió post pandemia, bien, pues igual el 90% de nuestro equipo, tanto de desarrollo como de otras áreas, pues sigue trabajando en remoto. Y eso es contrario a lo que uno puede ver en la industria y que uno incluso lo ve desde otras multinacionales que dicen, bueno, terminó la pandemia, vámonos a la oficina de nuevo. Y es a partir de aquí, a partir de esta comparación, donde el 90% de nuestros equipos siguen en forma remota a través de post pandemia, donde les queremos contar nuestros insights y los cambios en las formas de trabajo que se han producido. Bien, el primero, a consecuencia de la pandemia, a consecuencia de un trabajo 100% remoto, tuvimos que acelerar no solo nuestro enfoque de desarrollo hacia un concepto más iterativo, sino dotarnos de herramientas tecnológicas que nos soporten eso. Bien, y es ahí donde nosotros implementamos el enfoque de DevOps. Bien, acompañado también de herramientas. Yo siempre digo, no es implementar la metodología por la metodología, sino que tenemos que apoyarnos en herramientas que faciliten los flujos de trabajo más operativos entre desarrollo y operaciones. Prepandemia, nosotros no teníamos un área de operaciones, teníamos un área de soporte solamente, y soporte es netamente postventa, pero todo lo que es la liberación tanto de mejoras como de hotfix y temas correctivos, pues lo seguíamos haciendo en cascada, cada 3 meses, por decirlo de alguna manera. Entonces, esos procesos de mejoramiento, que se los digo, y esto es desde el punto de vista de nuestra experiencia, estaban pensados como, tenemos que hacerlos algún día, nos vimos forzados a implementarlos durante la pandemia. Mejoramos nuestra propia planificación, tuvimos que forzarnos a implementar técnicas, metodologías y sobre todo usar herramientas para pruebas automatizadas. Tuvimos que implementar pipelines que antes no lo teníamos. Nuestros equipos y mecanismos de integración, de despliegue y entrega, no estaban cohesionados. Tuvimos que implementar pipelines para hacerlo mucho más fluido desde la construcción, pasando por las pruebas, pasando por la integración y pasando por la entrega hacia el cliente final. Y esto también se vino a acelerar porque a nivel de industria hay un cambio entre pasar de soluciones monolíticas que están instaladas en las dependencias de los clientes a soluciones que están hosteadas en la nube, en nuestras nubes. Entonces, esos cambios también, y ojo, esto es un dato adicional solamente, pues también implicó que nosotros tuvimos que acelerar nuestro diseño y salida de un esquema de software como servicio. Entonces, las soluciones que yo les contaba al comienzo, ahora son software as a service y ahí hubo una necesidad de montar toda una capa de infraestructura como servicio y que por lo tanto esa infraestructura como servicio apenas es la última etapa o el último elemento de todo un pipeline que se tiene que construir desde atrás. Bien, lo cual nos permitió también mejorar la forma en la que medimos y optimizamos nuestros tiempos, por ejemplo, de pruebas, de entrega a clientes tipo early adopters y entrega también a cliente final. Ahora, esas mejoras vinieron, o más bien esas mejoras conllevaron la necesidad de soportarlas a través de un enfoque sistematizado en herramientas. ¿bien? Y si bien aquí hay herramientas que nos facilitan la organización de los equipos de trabajo, como puede ser una DevOps, ¿bien? O herramientas para automatización de pruebas, también nos obligó a tener que hacer más colaborativos. Ahí entramos con Teams, con Office, con SharePoint y con otras herramientas. Una cosa que también aumentamos mucho es nuestra revisión de pares. La revisión de pares ya no era un proceso que se producía netamente en el puesto de trabajo. Aumentamos mucho nuestra tasa, nuestros ratios de pull request para ayudarnos entre todos a hacer pruebas, ¿bien? Y finalmente, en este tema, sí les quiero decir que un cambio positivo, entre comillas, es cómo hacemos que diferentes productos, que era lo que yo les contaba al comienzo, se prueben entre sí y no hagamos pruebas unitarias, sino que hagamos pruebas integrales, hagamos pruebas de punta a punta. ¿Bien? Para ello también tuvimos que provisionarnos de ambientes, tuvimos que provisionarnos de herramientas que nos ayudaran a eso. Tuvimos que agregarnos, aunque suene crudo, burocracia, control sobre los ambientes, para qué se usan y qué se usan. Y nos forzamos también a no solamente hacer los daily de coordinación de equipos en desarrollo, sino agregarnos daily también de pruebas, porque tampoco teníamos mucho tracking al respecto. ¿Bien? Para ir cerrando en este punto, antes de contarles algunos hallazgos más cuantitativos, bien, no es ajeno a empresas como la nuestra la rotación de personal. Bien, y tampoco fue ajeno, junto con esa rotación de personal, mayores demoras en contratación, porque al final del día los equipos de desarrollo de software no solamente son demandados por empresas como la nuestra. Todas las empresas al final del día, se dediquen o no al desarrollo de software, al final necesitan tener personal especializado y con skills que nos empezamos a dar cuenta que la pandemia nos estaba requiriendo. ¿Bien? Entonces, a partir de ahí, ¿qué nos obligó a nosotros como organización? Uno, balancear esa rotación de personal y la extensión en tiempo que nos demoraba traer a nuevos equipos con adaptarlos a nuestro esquema de trabajo y reducir en la mayor medida posible nuestra curva de aprendizaje. ¿Qué resultó de eso? Más reuniones de coordinación, y ya les voy a contar los efectos negativos. Bien, rotación de personal interna. Oye, mientras llegan estas personas, tú hazte cargo de esta célula o de este equipo en particular. Y eso nos desafió mucho como organización y eso es lo que va a llevar a los impactos que les voy a contar a continuación. Y ojo, les invito a contrastar lo que aparentemente puede ser positivo a partir de estas métricas con los hallazgos más cualitativos que vendrán a continuación. Si uno quisiera medir la efectividad de los equipos como la cantidad de ítems de backlog que procesamos y que atendemos, pues a nosotros nos fue bien en la pandemia. Antes estaba entre el 85 a 90%, entendiendo los ítems de backlog para esta métrica, los que nos planificamos hacer por sprint versus los que realmente completamos. Ahora nuestra línea base de productividad está por encima del 90%. ¿Bien? A consecuencia de eso, estamos siendo mucho más efectivos no solo en la planificación, sino en la realización, en la ejecución. Por lo tanto, el backlog remanente que me queda en un sprint es mucho menos el que estoy moviendo al sprint siguiente. Entonces, no estoy haciendo que mis sprints posteriores empiecen a tener una mochila de lo que no pude hacer, una bolsa, de lo que no podemos hacer en el sprint anterior. ¿Bien? Y eso es reconocido por nuestros equipos cuando hacemos las retrospectivas. O sea, ellos dicen, oye, a pesar de que estamos bien, a pesar de que logramos realizar lo planificado con una tasa superior al 90%, sabemos que tenemos que mejorar la estimación. Y ese es un hallazgo muy bueno que empezamos a ver ya a partir de la retrospectiva. ¿Okay? Por otra parte, estamos siendo más efectivos en lo que tiene que ver con la asignación y el uso de la capacidad. Nosotros, por si acaso, por ser precisos en el lenguaje, le llamamos asignación a la proporción de horas que tiene un desarrollador o alguien de QA o un analista de sistemas con actividades planificadas correspondientes a los sprints. Uno no puede decir, oye, el 100% de tus horas son propias de actividades planificadas que pertenecen a los sprints. Porque uno igual tiene a veces pequeños tiempos ociosos o cosas puntuales que no tienen que ver a tu dedicación diaria. Hasta 2020 nosotros destinábamos 2 de cada 3 horas en nuestros equipos en promedio a actividades propias del trabajo correspondiente a su rol en los sprints y lo subimos a un 80%. Si uno traduce eso en horas reales de desarrollo, en líneas de código producidas, ahí se produjo un incremento significativo para nosotros. Y lo que nos mejoró también a nivel de la organización, bien, como les contaba anteriormente, la capacidad de medición. Eso sí les tengo que decir que no solamente se debe a tener herramientas que son centralizadas donde todos tenemos acceso a la información, es porque también se debe a que se comenzó a implementar una cultura de la medición. Bien, como aparece ahí antes, muchas tareas se registran al último día. No, ahora les pedimos a los equipos, vengan chicos, tómense 5 o 10 minutos del fin de su día, documenten lo que hicieron. Pero cuando digo documenten es, no nos interesa el detalle, porque para eso está en las historias de usuario, en DevOps, está en el detalle. Es, ¿qué me propuse hacer hoy? ¿Y qué completé hoy? Y eso nos ha ayudado al final del día. Entonces, creemos que tenemos capacidad para tener mejores tomas de decisiones en la reorganización y en cómo respondemos a las demandas del negocio, pero porque hemos implantado una cultura de la medición y eso, pues, en la prepandemia era algo que tenían algunos equipos, pero que no necesariamente todos tenían. ¿Ven? Para ir cerrando, y esto es lo subjetivo, lo cualitativo, que son los insights que buscamos poner a disposición. Bien, y lo primero es los métodos de trabajo. Los métodos de trabajo no solamente son las metodologías, el cómo nos organizamos, sino también las herramientas, ceremonias, rituales que soportan esos métodos. Entonces, durante el confinamiento ya cambiaron, es parte de lo que les conté anteriormente, pero luego el confinamiento también, porque también empezamos gradualmente muchos a regresar, pero otros se siguieron quedando. Entonces, no podíamos volver al esquema prepandemia, sino que tuvimos que ahora crear un esquema, llamémoslo post-pandemia, que considera rituales, ceremonias y mediciones para contextos de trabajo presenciales, pero también mantener ceremonias, rituales, mediciones asociadas al contexto de trabajo remoto. No olviden lo que yo les contaba al comienzo, 90% de nuestros equipos siguen trabajando en remoto, aun cuando podrían venir aquí a las oficinas. Entonces, tuvimos que adecuarnos en eso. Y en lo que tiene que ver con productividad, como insights, yo les diría, dado que cuando nosotros comenzamos a aplicar esquemas de trabajo iterativo, ágil, le damos la potestad a los equipos para que se autoorganicen. Bien, pues algunos productos de autoorganización avanzaron más rápido, en otros su productividad siguió la misma e incluso otros fueron más lentos. Entonces, una reflexión que yo hago, que yo comienzo a hacer al cierre, por decirlo de alguna manera, una cosa es la autoorganización que pueda tener cada célula, cada grupo de trabajo, y otra cosa es cómo la organización define para todos sus equipos políticas, esquemas, formas de trabajo que coexistan con esos grupos autoorganizados, pero que nos ayude a mantener o alcanzar niveles similares de productividad para todos. ¿Bien? Para los equipos de desarrollo, de acá no lo voy a negar, el trabajo individual se potencia. Y eso no hay que negarlo. Pero el trabajo en conjunto se siente diferente. ¿Y a qué me refiero con esto? Pues uno, y esto creo que lo hemos visto todos, trabajemos en áreas de desarrollo de software o no, necesitamos herramientas, necesitamos técnicas que nos ayuden a reducir o a mitigar los efectos de la participación remota. Bien, entonces cuando yo pongo aquí llamada en Teams o compartir pantalla, que si yo tengo que llamar a alguien de mi equipo por Teams, ese nivel de inmediatez, probablemente yo no lo tenía en presencial cuando yo tenía mis equipos de desarrollo de un producto en un lugar, en un conjunto de cubículos específicos. El compartir pantalla. ¿Le quiero mostrar a mis compañeros lo que estoy haciendo? ¿O el resumen de lo que estoy haciendo? Pues no todos lo quieren hacer. Y eso también es parte de. El apagar cámara, el modo silencio, el fondo virtual. Agregamos pequeñas cosas que para nosotros puede parecer súper obvio, pero cuando no trabajábamos en un esquema remoto no lo son. Al apagar cámara, por ejemplo, yo puedo evidenciar, ojo, esto es subjetivo, uno puede decir, hay un menor nivel de interés de las personas. El encender la cámara es esa persona que está al otro lado, está captando y está prestándome atención. ¿Bien? El fondo virtual para nosotros era totalmente, para mí o para nosotros, era totalmente transparente dónde estaba la persona. Pero hay personas que por no prender la cámara o no poner un fondo, pues no sabíamos mucho la reacción a lo que estábamos cuestionando o planteando en las ceremonias. ¿Bien? Y finalmente el nivel de enfoque o de dedicación a las tareas en nuestros equipos de desarrollo, pues varía de una persona a otra, ¿bien? Y esto es algo que viene a continuación y tiene que ver con lo siguiente. Los middle managers, ¿quiénes son los middle managers? Los líderes funcionales, un líder de producto por equipo o un líder de QA, etcétera. Ellos, debido a que se dieron cuenta de que el nivel de enfoque o dedicación a las tareas varía de una persona a otra, se vieron forzados a adquirir habilidades blandas, ¿ok? Y eso es algo que, gracias a Dios, los planes de estudio de las universidades, sobre todo en ingeniería de sistemas, están empezando a considerar. Manejar conflictos, bien, escuchar, empatizar, negociar, bien, eso antes, o probablemente lo aprendemos, pero no lo aplicamos porque probablemente lo delegamos en nuestros directores de desarrollo o nuestros gerentes de producto. Esos middle managers, que, ojo, son los que nos ayudan probablemente a los que estamos dirigiendo los equipos, nos ayudan a lograr esa capilaridad en bajar las definiciones y en lograr alineación y cohesionamiento, pues ellos se vieron obligados a adquirir esas habilidades. Y eso fue enriquecedor, pero cada persona también se vio más forzada a adquirirlas y menos. ¿Ven? Para los directivos, pues al final del día, y esto lo digo desde mi mirada, reuniones sin descanso. Nos vimos forzados, y yo me incluyo también en decirlo, en allocate, me gusta el concepto, en reservar todas las horas posibles para hacer reuniones, pero no teníamos espacios para reflexionar sobre ellas, tomar nota, planificar qué voy a hacer para la siguiente, ¿no? Y por lo tanto, eso también se vio a que como teníamos tantas reuniones sin descanso, pues el esquema de seguimiento sufrió cambios. Entonces ya no importaba tanto el proceso, el cómo llego a lo que voy a realizar, sino a los resultados finales. El tema es que detrás del resultado final yo tengo muchas formas diferentes para llegar a él. Por lo tanto, se vuelve difícil medir, estimar y estandarizar el cómo yo mido el esfuerzo de mis equipos y de mis colaboradores. Para cerrar y agradeciendo el tiempo, haciendo un resumen, pues creemos que el trabajo remoto ya no es tanto parece beneficiar, beneficia a los desarrolladores, les da una capacidad de concentración, de especificación o de atención al detalle muy diferente. Para esos casos, para ese tipo de tareas, la recomendación es sigámoslo haciendo remoto. Nos evitamos las distracciones, nos evitamos incluso factores exógenos como lo que es el tema del traslado, sobre todo en ciudades como Bogotá. Pero si esas personas necesitan hacer tareas creativas, las recomendaciones o las hacemos presenciales o las hacemos de forma remota, pero de una manera tal que busquemos las formas para promover esa colaboración. A la administración, por lo tanto, si yo trabajo en enfoque 100% remoto, pues por supuesto que nos castiga, ¿bien? Y en Latinoamérica está esa falsa percepción de control que da el trabajo presencial. Yo invito también a ustedes y a las organizaciones en las que trabajen, replantéense si el trabajo presencial realmente significa control. Esa no es la mirada y eso es el aprendizaje que nosotros hemos obtenido. Y prepararse para el trabajo remoto cuando nos toque la próxima pandemia, porque nos va a tocar probablemente, o si no es una pandemia, es un evento en particular que nos obliga a esto. Las organizaciones tienen que adherir a leyes en particular que promuevan el trabajo remoto sin que mermen la experiencia del trabajador y sin que merme tanto el cumplimiento de obligaciones como el cumplimiento de los derechos. Replicar la oficina, y acá les voy a contar una anécdota. Pues antes de la pandemia, como todos trabajábamos en oficina, pues todos teníamos estaciones de trabajo, desktops. Pero replicar la oficina en el contexto remoto, sea 100% remoto o sea híbrido, implica que yo tengo que tener equipos de escritorio, que tengo que tener sillas, como contaba Marcos anteriormente, de tener un esquema para ello. ¿Bien? Y finalmente, y con esto cierro, esta es nuestra experiencia. ¿Bien? Por lo tanto, hay que tomarlo de manera subjetiva. Cada organización encuentra su balance. ¿Bien? Cada organización encuentra su forma de agruparse y de organizarse en un esquema remoto y a partir de esta sesión espero que podamos comenzar a medir y cuantificar a nivel agregado cómo el trabajo remoto beneficia a los equipos de desarrollo software. Esto es lo que les queríamos contar. Yo de antemano les agradezco mucho y espero que hayamos sido un aporte, digamos, de cara a esta sesión.
Muy bien, muchas gracias, Alejandro. Quisiera saber si los presentes tienen preguntas, porque en el chat no tenemos ninguna pregunta. No sabemos si todo está súper claro o prefieren hacer sus preguntas de manera verbal. Si no las tienen, Kelly tiene una pregunta y yo tengo luego un comentario. Entonces, pues adelante, Kelly.
Bueno, para romper el hielo, aunque no nos queda mucho tiempo, pero me parece importante, aprovechando que tenemos estas dos visiones, una visión académica de Marcos y una visión industrial de Alejandro, preguntarle, fíjense que Marcos nos trajo hoy unas ideas súper interesantes sobre este framework space que nos gustaría, a mí me gustaría estudiar. Pero fíjense que él nos hizo un llamado, este es un llamado a toda nuestra comunidad, academia e industria y, ¿por qué no gobierno?, a mirar los aspectos humanos del software. Entonces, naturalmente, desde ingeniería de software pensamos en las tecnologías, ¿no? En todo esto que Alejandro nos mencionaba de cómo el pipeline de DevOps, de integración continua, les mejoró la calidad del software, por ejemplo. Entonces, esas prácticas las hacemos naturalmente desde un punto de vista ingenieril. Pero cuando ya nos vamos al framework space, en donde tenemos unos pilares, a Marcos hablaba de el bienestar, de la comunicación y la colaboración, yo me estoy preguntando, Alejandro, si ustedes de forma intencional han hecho cosas en estos sentidos, ya más pensando en los aspectos humanos. ¿Qué nos podrías decir tú?
Vale, bueno, yo ahí te podría decir que fue una mezcla entre algo intencional y algo que efectivamente fue reactivo. ¿Bien? Eso yo creo que ahí no hay dos miradas. ¿Bien? Ahora, ¿qué fue la clave de esto? Aunar visiones. Y acá nos apoyamos mucho con nuestro equipo de gestión humana. ¿Bien? Porque claro, nosotros desde las áreas de desarrollo de software, ¿bien? Y por eso insisto el tema de las soft skills. Tuvimos que ir a buscar habilidades que no teníamos internalizadas y que teníamos que recoger de la organización. Entonces, fue una mezcla de ambas, por decirlo de alguna manera.
Okay.
Vale, Alejandro, gracias.
Marcos, tú dijiste que entendías español. Yo quiero
Sí,
comentar algo sobre lo que dijiste. Tú hablas portugués, ¿cierto?
sí, portugués. Comprendo
Entonces,
español, pero no hablo, no, no,
ok,
no.
ok. Yo entiendo portoñol, entonces yo estoy
Ah,
segura que voy a hablar en español despacio, eh, pero quiero estar segura de que me vas a entender. Eh, Durante tu presentación, varias veces hiciste mención de la psicología y qué bueno que la psicología estaba presente acá. Yo quiero hacer un comentario breve con respecto a lo que tú mencionaste. Efectivamente, yo estoy aquí en este equipo trabajando con Kelly y con José y sus estudiantes desde una mirada de la psicología de la salud ocupacional. Eh, la psicología de la salud ocupacional se interesa por ver condiciones de trabajo que facilitan el trabajo y facilitan además que los trabajadores estén sanos, sanos desde el punto de vista físico y mental,
ujú,
¿sí? Y hay una gran cantidad de investigación que muestra condiciones no solo ergonómicas, sino condiciones psicosociales que pueden afectar la salud y el bienestar de los colaboradores, entre otras estas cosas que estamos discutiendo aquí. Por eso yo fui invitada por Kelly a trabajar con ellos para tratar de identificar en la empresa que en un momento dado los buscó, ver qué condiciones del trabajo podían estar afectando, porque aquí hubo un cambio en las condiciones de trabajo, ¿cierto? Me agradó muchísimo escuchar en tu presentación que tú mencionaste muchas de las cosas sin conocer los modelos de estrés laboral, que es en particular en lo que yo soy especialista, es decir, qué condiciones en el trabajo generan estrés y a través del estrés producen problemas de salud mental y de salud física, porque no es solamente un tema de salud mental. Estamos hablando de muchísimos problemas de salud física también, ¿cierto? Y me parece interesante cómo el trabajo de ustedes ha logrado identificar muchos de esos factores humanos, en particular, no todo el tema de la relación del jefe y de cómo el jefe debe ser abierto, flexible, eh, capaz de generar confianza para que sus empleados puedan mencionar las cosas que se necesitan cambiar, ¿cierto? Y yo no quiero demorar mucho a la gente porque todos estamos aquí cortos de tiempo, solamente quiero hacer dos como advertencias. Ojo que a veces nos centramos mucho en las características del ser humano, como si fuera un problema de personalidad o un problema de habilidades personales, cuando la mayor parte de las veces es un asunto de condiciones,
Sí.
exceso de demandas, capacidad de la gente de atreverse a decir, es que no entiendo eso que tú llamabas el impostor fenómeno, me llamó mucho la atención cómo ustedes han creado un concepto especial para definir la inseguridad en el trabajo con respecto a la capacidad que yo tengo en un contexto particular de sentir que tengo o no las habilidades. Y seguramente eso no es un problema individual, es un problema que se refiere a que yo en un contexto no me siento que tengo la educación, no me han dado la confianza o soy mujer en un grupo de hombres, cuando las mujeres no hemos sido pues como parte de un grupo en particular. Entonces, digamos que los invito a pensar siempre primero antes que si es un problema personal o un problema de personalidad o un problema de qué, es un problema de mirar en qué condiciones está trabajando la gente en términos de demandas, de capacidad de tomar decisiones, de tener apoyo de su jefe y de sus colegas, porque a veces también son los colegas son los que comentan, dicen, aíslan, no ayudan, se separan, etcétera, etcétera. Eso por un lado. Y por el otro lado, yo invitaría a que no hablemos de felicidad. Eso del tema de la felicidad es una forma banal de hablar del bienestar y en particular de la salud de la gente. Para ser felices podemos tomarnos unos tragos, fumarnos un cigarrillo y a veces las empresas terminan haciendo eso, organizan fiestas, te mandan el regalo de cumpleaños y creen que están haciendo bienestar en el trabajo porque nos están haciendo felices por raticos. Y creo que tenemos que pensar más en el bienestar en términos más estables, en términos de la gente que tenga las condiciones de trabajo y de vida que requiere, y mucho de eso implica concentrarse en cómo está la gente trabajando y cómo está la gente viviendo, y no tanto en si tú eres tal o cual tipo de persona, ¿cierto? ¿Qué es lo que pasa con muchas de las empresas? Y es lo que yo veo de mi trabajo, que las empresas mandan a hacer tallercitos de estrés, relájate, medita, concéntrate, es un asunto tuyo, casi que si tú quieres ser feliz, tú lo eres, si no eres más rico porque tú no lo deseas más, cuando todo eso es basura y mentira. Y la palabra felicidad se ha utilizado mucho en eso de la gerencia de la felicidad, y las empresas tienen gerente de felicidad, que hace muchas de estas cosas que a mi juicio banalizan el bienestar realmente de lo que debemos preocuparnos de la gente. Solamente con eso, porque pues aquí podríamos durar mucho tiempo conversando, porque hay muchas cosas interesantes en la presentación que hicieron los dos, pero pues seguramente habrá otras oportunidades. Espero que con Kelly y con todo el equipo podamos seguir trabajando. Yo no había trabajado con ingenieros, he aprendido mucho escuchándolos a ustedes, escuchando el equipo de Kelly, y estoy fascinada, y ojalá ustedes también pudieran aprender un poco más de todo este tema. Muchas gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias.
Sí, muchas gracias. Yo quedo muy contenta y muy emocionada por esto. Aprendí un montón. Gracias, Alejandro, y gracias, Marcos. Espero que podamos seguir trabajando juntos. Fíjense que esto va a traer un movimiento, espero, para que como
Ojalá.
comunidad entendamos más de este problema y construyamos juntos soluciones, buenas prácticas, que fíjense que en el contexto latinoamericano sabemos muy poco. Nosotros revisamos el estado del arte y Marcos fue la única persona que en el contexto brasilero estudió este problema de la productividad en pandemia. Entonces, sigamos adelante, los invitamos a todos a unirse a esto. Y nada, para no tomar más de su tiempo, hasta una próxima ocasión, vamos a compartirles el video de este webinario. Hasta pronto.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes a todos, muchas
Chao.
gracias.
Chao.
Gracias.